boreal forest, rich in timber and wildlife. It is a complex web of relationships and interdependencies. And it is spectacular. Industry extracts ore and timber from it. Tourist outfitters market the wilderness experience of it. Hikers and campers, hunters and fishermen use it. Everyone at some time has used the forest or the products made from it. With so many taking from the forest, the task of maintaining this complex ecosystem might seem impossible. And as long as those responsible for managing it tend to each part of the forest without an eye on its other parts, it may well become that way, unmanageable. Maintaining the integrity of our forest is our shared responsibility. Planning the future of our forest resources represents a new challenge for resource managers. We must broaden our knowledge, strengthen our communication skills, and solve more of our problems in the field to successfully meet this challenge. This presentation will encourage a greater understanding and appreciation for the concerns of both timber and wildlife managers. It will promote more effective communications and help us integrate our timber and wildlife management practices in our forest management plans. Man's relationship with the forest has changed dramatically throughout history. Not long ago, native peoples depended solely on the forest for food, shelter, and clothing. What was taken from the forest was held in deep respect. Even today, nature informs this culture. The forest community is a thing to be revered. Early European settlers, too, relied on our forests. The furs and timber they extracted supported lucrative trading and exporting businesses. The riches of the forest seemed inexhaustible. But dwindling white pine forests by the end of the 19th century and declining numbers of fur-bearing and big game animals suggested otherwise. In spite of these signals, we continued to impose. The pulp and paper industry was booming. Mills had to be fed with a continuous supply of timber. Early harvesting was obliging to nature's processes. A selective winter harvest was beneficial to natural regeneration, and access into the forest was restricted by watercourse for transport of timber downstream in the spring. The 1940s and 50s brought a new logger into the forest. Equipped with chainsaws, skidders, loaders, and haul trucks, road networks were developed and timber was harvested all year round. The practice of clear-cutting spread quickly and widely. It was cost-efficient then. It still is today. The effect of the industry on the forest was increasing. Yet it was not till after the Second World War that the public became actively involved in the management of natural resources. Many non-profit organizations arose, dedicated to sustaining those forest resources which they were interested in. Increased prosperity and leisure time over the last 20 years have brought even more users into the forest, and they have greater demands, not just on a few resources, but on all. This has made the job of forest management more complicated. Fish and wildlife populations must be supported, timber resources sustained, and recreational opportunities provided. Satisfying all these needs is clearly a formidable task. Formidable because all parts of the forest are interconnected. Affect one part, and you affect the whole forest. One of the strongest bonds in the forest ties the vegetative component with the wildlife it supports. It manifests itself in what we call food chains or webs. At the bottom of the food chain, or the lowest trophic level, are those that feed on plants, the herbivores. They in turn are eaten by the higher level consumers. At the top of these food chains reign the most successful predators. alter the physical or biotic properties of any trophic level, and the whole chain is affected. Under extreme conditions, this could mean local extirpation or proliferation of a species. We have already experienced the fragility of these relationships. The use of persistent organochlorine compounds, notably DDT, resulted in the decline of the bald eagle in the 1960s and 70s over much of its breeding territory. The bald eagle and the peregrine falcon are still listed as endangered species. We have learned much through our past mistakes. Today we are re-establishing these two species in former ranges. The relationship between the fisher and the porcupine has taught us another lesson. A combination of intense trapping pressure and loss of habitat through logging reduced fisher populations. Porcupine, the next link on this food chain, proliferated when their natural enemy declined. We must take great care to maintain these vital relationships in the forest. We must ensure that the vegetative landscape can support the higher trophic levels. The forest is dynamic. It is always changing. Each plant community will emerge in a predictable sequence. The vegetative composition and physical structure of the forest at any one point in time will be more suitable for some wildlife species and less so for others. Time windows will be wide for those that use the stand for a long time. For others, they may be narrow. The process reflecting the changes that take place as a plant community develops is known as succession. It is what gives the forest its ebb and flow, what supports food chains. Understanding succession is important for making effective forest management decisions. The boreal forest is adapted to catastrophic events. Plant community development will reflect the nature of a disturbance and the physical and chemical characteristics of the site. These include soil moisture and nutrients, structure of the humus layer, slope, position, and aspect. Let's examine the process of succession following a severe burn on a fertile, well-drained site. The wind scatters seeds of the pioneering plant species over the area. These plants quickly establish themselves and thrive on exposed soils in full sunlight. Soon after, the herbaceous plants and shrubs emerge. This early growth offers tremendous habitat for small mammals and many birds. Fruit and nuts are essential for building fat reserves, necessary for long migrations or winter hibernation. Herbs and shrubs are overtaken by fast-growing deciduous species, such as trembling aspen and white birch. This new growth forest provides a great variety and quantity of food for moose and deer, and affords them some escape cover from predators. Hidden by the broadleaf deciduous species are the conifers, which grow much more slowly. Each tree species will emerge in a predictable order and blossom or dominate in its own time. As the stand develops, the overstory canopy shuts out light, and the sun-loving herbs and shrubs disappear. The resulting mixed-wood stand contains great variation in plant life and structural diversity. From late summer to early winter, moose and deer will benefit from a combination of abundant browse and cover. As the shorter-lived deciduous species die out, conifers will dominate later successional stages. Mature conifer stands are less diverse, but they will attract some wildlife species for specific reasons. Moose will find refuge in these stands as winter advances and snow depths increase. Mature conifer stands can be critical for reducing heat stress on warm, sunny spring days in deep or encrusted snow conditions. Woodland caribou seek mature conifer forests, although they are seldom seen. The arboreal and ground lichens, often associated with these stands, are rich in carbohydrates, important for their winter survival. With time, the overmature conifer stand begins to decay, and the forest canopy opens up. The dead and woody material in these stands are a vital component of the forest ecosystem. Hollow trees can offer refuge to some wildlife species, breeding sites to others, and provide roosting and foraging opportunities. Insects and bacteria and fungi contribute to the deterioration of the stand. And as annuals begin to seed in, the forest renews itself. The plant community which unfolds and the wildlife it nurtures give rise to hundreds of vital relationships. In the 2 sections that follow, we introduce the techniques and strategies of wildlife and timber managers.
Prime site areas for moose are also the prime site areas for our timber.
Let's first examine the concerns of wildlife managers.
Okay, Peter. You bet. Bye-bye.
Wildlife management in the past focused on game species: moose, deer, black bear, grouse, and hare. Increased awareness and appreciation for all wildlife has provided direction for managing a wider range of species. Wildlife management now includes all mammals, birds, reptiles, and amphibians. Wildlife managers attempt to maintain the forest ecosystem in a way that supports wildlife populations and provides continuing public benefit. Our wildlife resources offer many benefits. Wildlife contributes to the economic livelihood of trappers and tourist outfitters. It provides recreational opportunities to hunters and anglers. For others, it is enough just to look, to somehow connect with nature. All these benefits have given wildlife a greater value, a value that cannot easily be assigned a dollar figure. How is this complex forest ecosystem managed to benefit all wildlife? Wildlife managers try to provide a mosaic of habitats which will support all species. They do this in a way that emulates the natural processes of succession. Yet wildlife managers seldom have the opportunity to create habitat directly. The forest is shaped naturally by fire, insect epidemics, and by man, through logging and reforestation practices, fire suppression policies, and land clearing activities. In creating a forest that supports wildlife, these managers work with timber managers who directly shape the vegetative landscape. This collaboration is part of the timber management planning process. During this process, wildlife managers implement their habitat management strategies. Since plant community development is a relatively slow process, a long-term approach to habitat management is necessary. Featured species management is one such technique. One wildlife species is selected for emphasis on a unit of land, and its requirements are used to integrate habitat management with timber management on that unit. Provincially, we have chosen a generalist for the strategy. If habitat is managed for a species that uses the forest in a general way, then habitat for most other species that evolved in and use the same environment will be provided. Moose are a provincially selected featured species. They browse on the succulent new growth of hardwood and mixedwood stands throughout the year and have preferences for poplar, willow, hazel, mountain maple, red osier dogwood, and birch. They are known to consume 20 to 30 kilograms of buds, stems, bark, and leaves daily. Moose seek cover in mature mixedwood or mid-successional conifer stands, and during the summer will favor aquatic vegetation to satisfy mineral requirements. Moose will most often be the featured species because of their widespread distribution in the boreal forest. Deer will be selected for emphasis in the Great Lakes St. Lawrence forest region. Woodland caribou can also be a good candidate for this management strategy, although they are somewhat more specialized. They inhabit northern boreal forests and taiga, and will range throughout the forest to forage, seek shelter, and avoid predators. Habitat management guidelines help timber managers create the most desired habitat for a featured species in their timber management plans. Management strategies differ for each species, primarily with respect to the size of the cut relative to the residual timber. Varying the size of the cut controls distance to cover or proximity to edge. Edge is the interface of two discrete plant communities. It is the area where successional stages or vegetative conditions come together. The amount of edge and the habitat features represented by it determine the quality of habitat for a species, such as moose. Moose benefit from intermediate size cuts, 100 to 125 hectares, alternated with uncut stands of a similar size. Where deer range occurs on the southern boundary of the boreal forest, 10 to 20 hectare cutovers are beneficial. 50 hectare clear cuts may be acceptable if the quality and quantity of edge is high. This patch cut technique in a lowland cedar swamp improves winter habitat for deer. The overhead canopy provides dense cover for winter shelter, while the cutover area now produces an abundance of regenerating browse species. Caribou do not benefit from logging. They seek undisturbed, mature jack pine and spruce forests. Where caribou are the featured wildlife species, harvesting patterns must reflect their habitat requirements. Large cuts, 350 to 500 hectares, interspersed with similar-sized leaf blocks, will permit the harvest of timber, yet provide habitat for displaced caribou to emigrate. This pattern will be discouraging to moose and the predators that follow them. Thus, increased predation on caribou would not be anticipated. The rapid recolonization of lichens is important for winter habitat and can be encouraged by light scarification, scattering slash, or even seeding lichens following site preparation. Varying the size of the cut is not the only means of controlling distance to cover. Another technique is leaving a shelter patch or travel corridor through a potentially large clear-cut. Ideally, suitable shelter should be available within 200 meters from any point in the cutover. Moose can forage on the new growth in cutovers, yet still be close to the standing timber for cover and escape from predators. Featured species management is a broad approach for managing habitat. For the protection of special or unique habitat features, we employ site-specific management. Site-specific management is an effective tool for protecting nests of rare or endangered species, such as the bald eagle, or the traditional nesting areas of highly visible species such as osprey or heron. Mineral licks, such as this one, calving sites, and aquatic feeding areas may also require special management prescriptions. These special habitat features are regularly inventoried and monitored. They are flagged as areas of concern in the timber management planning process. Harvesting operations and reforestation practices will ensure these vital habitat components are protected. Both site-specific and featured species management strategies create the kind of habitat necessary to sustain our wildlife populations. But for these strategies to work, they must be understood and implemented by timber managers who directly shape forest vegetation. Similarly, wildlife managers must have a better understanding of timber management to develop realistic planning options. Our timber resources are the basis of the forest products industry in Northern Ontario and have made this industry competitive on world markets. Companies have invested heavily to access the resource, construct mills, and maintain state-of-the-art technology to meet the demand for wood and wood fiber. This industry accounts for half of all manufacturing jobs in Northern Ontario. It meets a consumer demand for building materials and paper products, both at home and abroad. This industry contributes to the province's social and economic well-being. It reinvests locally by purchasing equipment, services, and supplies. The industry contributes to community support programs and provides us with an avenue for pursuing recreational activities through access road development. Timber management on Crown lands in Ontario provides a continuous and predictable supply of wood for Ontario's forest products industry. Timber management is thus primarily concerned with accessing, harvesting, renewing, and maintaining this valuable natural resource. Companies must know where they can acquire a supply of commercially desirable species. Forest stands are described on Forest Resource Inventory, or FRI maps. These maps contain information about species composition, age, height, stocking, and productivity of a site. When supplemented with operational cruising, this inventory is useful for determining the supply of each tree species and its proximity to mills. Not all species are valued by the industry. Some are more commercially desirable because of inherent wood qualities. Jack pine, for instance, is well suited for saw logs. It grows relatively straight, has a large diameter, is moderately strong, and shrinks little when dried. Black spruce, with its long fibers, is a better choice for the pulp and paper industry. While some of the boreal hardwoods, such as white birch and trembling aspen, are used for plywood, particle board, and to some extent pulp. Recent technological advancement has made it possible to use a wider variety of species in pulp and paper mills. This includes some of the hardwoods, which are relatively underutilized in northwestern Ontario. This has increased the economic value of the forest. Tree species diversity is important to companies who must anticipate changing consumer demand to stay competitive. The key to ensuring a continuous and predictable supply of wood is a balanced age class distribution. Over the last 40 years, natural events, combined with our aggressive fire suppression policies, have created an excess supply of mature and over-mature timber. But much of this supply is located in remote areas. To utilize this resource, government has encouraged industry to increase access and accelerate the cut. An unbalanced age class distribution is expected to persist, and as younger age classes mature, projected shortfalls in older age classes are anticipated. If this happens, companies may be forced to harvest younger trees. Long-range solutions to remedy the age class problem are being developed. Managers are faced with the difficult task of prolonging the life of maturing forest while intensively managing the new forest to narrow the age gap. Ideally, timber should be harvested to attain the greatest volume of wood. This can be accomplished if the stand is logged when the mean annual increment is at its maximum. Once a tree has passed this point, it grows much more slowly. Eventually, the quality of wood decreases. Following harvest, a new crop must be established as quickly as possible. Site preparation can reduce slash and expose mineral soil, readying the site for natural regeneration, aerial seeding, or planting stock. It can also help reduce competing vegetation and insect infestations, lessening the need for chemical control. There are 3 techniques used to prepare a site in Northern Ontario: prescribed burning, mechanical site preparation, and chemical site preparation. Prescribed burning is a cost-effective means of preparing a seed bed or planting spot. It can be extremely effective on a site with a thick organic layer and low moisture level. Mechanical site prep is the most common method of preparing a site. Specific site conditions will determine what equipment is needed. The residuals were so great after this budworm salvage operation that blading was the only alternative. A winter blading operation can be effective for minimizing soil disturbance. The bracky is more effective on sandier soils. On sites with moderate duff, barrels and chains are usually required. The TTS disc trencher has become popular because of its site versatility. Some sites may have to be chemically prepared. Undesirable plant species can suppress the growth of a new crop. Competing species must be identified and the appropriate herbicide selected. Treatment rates, timing, equipment, and weather conditions are then carefully matched to the objectives of the program. Herbicides may also be necessary for tending commercial crops, helping them reach free-to-grow status. Major outbreaks of insect infestations are natural and common to northern Ontario. Chemical or biological agents may be necessary to reduce insect damage on commercial species. The behavior of insecticides is understood and predictable, and risks can be controlled by adjusting magnitude, duration, and frequency of exposure. Site prep, reforestation efforts, tending operations, and protection are all investments necessary for ensuring our future timber supply. Timber managers seek to gain the highest overall return on these investments. This has encouraged some companies to manage their prime sites. Prime site management considers the capability of a site to grow trees and the economics of maintaining and harvesting the crop.
This area here we intend to plant. It's a prime site really for trees. It's a good ground, and we're only 50 miles away from the mill, so we definitely want to regenerate this area back as soon as possible.
By intensively managing the most productive sites closest to the mill, timber managers can maximize their forest investments. For this reason, prime site management is gaining wider acceptance. While prime site management has become a tool for maximizing investments, new developments in science and technology are leading the way to an improved wood supply. Genetics research and tree improvement are increasing fiber quality and wood value, and helping to reduce rotation ages. The forest ecosystem classification is proving itself a useful tool for classifying sites by productivity and silvicultural value. Forest pests and disease, such as the spruce budworm and the jack pine gall rust, are being monitored and mitigation programs are being developed. And new initiatives with geographic information systems are making it possible to analyze management planning options with greater efficiency and accuracy. To transfer some of this scientific knowledge and technological advancement to the field, our government has established 4 technology development units across the province. Our timber resource must be managed to ensure a continuous and predictable supply of wood for our forest products industry. A balanced age-class distribution contributes to a stable resource base upon which this industry depends. Balancing the age-class distribution of the forest is also compatible with wildlife management, which attempts to create a mosaic of habitats that supports our wildlife populations. Timber and wildlife managers must share a wider perspective of the forest. Rather than seeing only the timber or only the wildlife, managers must see both the timber and the wildlife. They must consider the whole forest rather than each part of it. They must become forest managers, not just wildlife or timber managers. A holistic approach to forest management is the only way to maintain the integrity of the forest and all the resources within it. Let's examine how compromise and trade-offs can lead to the integration of these management strategies.
We'll show whether or not we go closer to Dunn Lake or closer to Blackbird Lake. And that will all be the result of input and discussions with those tourist operators most directly affected, plus any other input we get.
Forest management is the responsibility of a team of specialists in concert with the public. Each team member contributes their knowledge, experience, and management skills to the plan. Long-range plans direct activities on a 20-year forecast, while 5-year operating plans are more specific. The finer details are worked out in annual work schedules. These plans will take advantage of the natural conditions of the site and topographical features to create a diversity of vegetative communities and age classes in the forest. Where these do not occur, however, managers must develop innovative strategies to provide habitat and ensure a continuous and predictable supply of timber. There are 2 strategies useful for ensuring diversity. The first is to stagger harvesting operations both spatially and temporally. The second is to ensure variability of plant communities. Diversity can be enhanced or reduced by varying the pattern and timing of the cut. For example, this circular harvest pattern minimizes edge. If the circle is enlarged, the amount of edge relative to the cut-over area is decreased. A single rectangular block increases edge, but irregular cuts can maximize edge relative to the cut area. This pattern will favor those wildlife species which benefit from edge and need not diminish the timber volume which can be attained. Costs and benefits of cutting patterns must be assessed and effects anticipated. This illustrates a loss of timber along the edge due to blowdown, and here to insect infestation. This may have been prevented by a closer evaluation of the specific site characteristics. Orientation to prevailing wind direction, proximity to insect infestations, age of stand, topography, soil depth, and moisture regime must all be examined. In uniform stands, diversity can be created by dispersing the cut. Large clear cuts tend to perpetuate the regeneration of nature's relatively even-aged stands. If large clear cuts are broken up into smaller units, variability in age class alone can enhance habitat for wildlife. Dispersing 100-hectare cuts on average quality moose range meets the habitat management requirements for moose as a featured wildlife species. Habitat management guidelines include enough flexibility to allow the option of increasing cut size in areas with a low potential for producing moose. This cut size may also be appropriate near caribou range, since larger cut and leave blocks are more compatible with caribou management. Alternately, cut size may be reduced in areas which have a better than average potential of producing moose, or which overlap with deer range. Let's use what we have learned to resolve a complex issue. A company wishes to harvest a highly productive stand close to the mill, but the biologist has identified this area as important winter habitat for moose. We know that moose are generalists, benefiting from a variety of vegetative components. This scenario includes a mix of recent cutover, mid-successional mixedwood, and mature conifer stands. A moose would spend most of its time here. The quality of habitat for moose can be improved by modifying the cut. This stylized pattern illustrates a creative alternative. Site characteristics must permit the growth of these vegetative types, and increased costs of road layout and construction must be anticipated. But the benefits from our forest can be increased when we integrate our management practices. An integrated approach is also necessary to develop effective road location proposals. Special provisions may be necessary for protecting sensitive or unique habitat features. A road proposal may have to be altered to accommodate a bald eagle or osprey nest. An 800-meter buffer zone will ensure critical breeding habitat is protected. Recreational use of fish and wildlife can be enhanced by the development of an industrial road network. Similarly, the numbers and distribution of the harvest can be controlled through regulation. Forest management activities must be sensitive to all other users, including the tourist industry. Road access and harvest operations close to remote lodges or outpost camps require careful consideration. The tourist industry in Northern Ontario runs from May to October. It markets a wilderness experience. Timing of the cut must be sensitive to these needs. Conflicts can often be avoided by winter harvest, followed by rapid regeneration of a new crop. The protection of valued scenic resources is also important to our tourist industry. Standard reserve width may not be able to achieve this. Skyline reserves, designed to complement topographical features, may resolve this issue. Many of our problems can be easily solved in the field. For example, shoreline reserves on lakes are not always necessary. Field inspection may indicate that erosion and siltation are not concerns. Modified cut patterns or selective cutting may be acceptable options. The use of angled strip cuts or chevron cuts may be able to protect scenic qualities and permit utilization of a valuable timber resource. Some aspects of forest management are currently unresolved and the subject of continuing study. The impact of herbicides on wildlife is one such issue. Herbicides are a useful tool for suppressing competing vegetation, but many of these deciduous trees and shrubs are valuable browse species. Suppressing these species over a broad area for an extended period of time can diminish the quality of habitat for many wildlife species. While the effects of herbicides on wildlife are currently being studied, this biologist and forester have worked out a compromise.
You're probably going to have to depend on herbicides to get the young coniferous up free to grow.
Oh yeah, definitely. They're productive sites. They may not look that great right now. We can lower our rotation ages and get a new crop back here fairly quickly.
Perhaps we could work some kind of a buffer system around those cover patches where maybe a 1 or a 2 chain buffer that won't be sprayed to allow the browse to come up and be in close proximity to the cover.
Yeah, probably we won't be able to get right up there with the machines to scarify quite close to those buffers, so we won't be losing anything there either.
Well, that's good.
It'll work out well.
Yeah, as I say, that should be the focus for wildlife activity in the interim before we get regeneration here, so if we can retain those areas through the silvicultural treatments, then it'll be good.
Okay.
The forest products industry offers us a golden opportunity to satisfy our need for wood and create quality wildlife habitat. But it is up to us to work together to create a forested landscape that offers a multitude of benefits. Nature has provided us with a wealthy heritage. Only we can ensure it remains a wealthy inheritance.